In this video, I'm going to be talking about the different types of ant-plant symbiosis. So plants that have a symbiotic relationship with ants are called myrmecophytes. Myrmeca meaning ant and phytes meaning plants. This literally means ant plants. This symbiosis is widespread throughout many different types of plant and ant species. It's found in over 100 different genera of angiosperm and found in around 40 genera of ants. It's also one of the most studied examples of mutualism and has served as a research model for studying mutualism evolution and how stable mutualism is over time. The interactions between the two can range from being general facultative relationships to highly specific obligate ones. Many plant and ant species have co-evolved with each other, leading to diverse and complex interactions between certain plant and ant species. Plant species do differ in how much they invest in their ant symbiote. So some plants can only feed their ant colonies, while some plants can also feed and house them. It really just depends on the relationship between the two and how dependent the plant is on the ant. Certain species of plants can also have special structural adaptations for protecting and feeding the ants. In exchange for this, the ants provide the plants with defense and other benefits. And again, this really just depends on what the relationship is between the two. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the three main benefits for both plants and ants in this symbiosis. And we're first going to start with the three benefits for the ants. So the first benefit for the ants is called domatia. So these are hollow structures inside the plant that the ants can use for their nests and their home. Depending on the species of plants, these can be found in either hollow stems, thorns, or spines. It is the less commonly found of the three benefits I'm going to talk about, and is mainly found in tropical plants. So there are two types of domatia found in plants. The first one is called primary domatia, and this is domatia that's already in the plant when it forms. The ants are not there already in the plant, but it has already made its domatia and is just waiting on its ant symbiote. The ants can enlarge the space themselves, and they can also make additional doorways in the domatia. The second type is called secondary domatia, and these are modified structures by the ants. So the ants create the domatia, and these are considered distinct organs on the plants, such as leaf pouches. The secondary domatia is also the less studied of the two. The second type of benefit for the plant is called extrafloral nectar. So nectar is just a very sugary, watery solution that the ants can use as food that are provided for by the plants. Usually plants provide nectar in flowers to attract pollinators. However, this nectar is found outside flowers and is located in structures called nectaries on other spots in the plants, such as on leaves, stems, leaf margins, or shoots. And this nectar is not involved with pollination at all, and its main purpose is just to attract ants and to provide the ants with food. It has been reported up to 108 flowering families and 4 fern families. In plants with domatia, this nectar can provide resident ants with food, while plants without domatia, the nectar can attract ants to visit the plant for food, so they can get the ants to come to them that way. The third type of benefits for the ants are called food bodies. So most ant species cannot survive on just sugary nectar alone. So some plants have evolved to produce protein or lipid-rich food bodies that the ants can consume. The composition of the food bodies are really based on what a particular ant species needs. So somehow the ants can tell the plants, or the plants can infer what the ants need in its food bodies. This also avoids plants making food bodies for non-mutualistic ant species that are not benefiting the plant in any way. They have found in different studies that mutualist ants stimulate the production of food bodies just being on the plants and defending it. Somehow the plants can sense which ant species are defending it and make food bodies just for them. and this has been reported in about 34 families of angiosperms. So the next 3 slides are about the benefits for the plant. So the main benefit for plants in this symbiosis is the fence of it. So herbivores, they feed on plants, and they can really affect the plant fitness and new leaf growth in plants, in which this results in lower survivorship and reproduction of the plant. Ants in or / on the plants can protect their host. They can bite and sting invaders of plants to make them go away, and some species of ants will also throw herbivores off their plant. They will also bite off encroaching vines or inject vines with formic acid to make them get out of their plant's way so their plant can get all the sunlight it needs. They can also protect against different fungal diseases as well. The second type of benefit for the plant is dispersal of seeds. So ants collect and disperse seeds of plants. So this mainly happens in ants that do not live in the plant and have nests elsewhere. So certain plant species produce seeds with a larysum attached to it, and this is just a detachable food body, usually high in fatty acids or some type of lipids. So the ants collect the seeds, they bring them back to their nest and pull the larysum off for food, and then they just toss the seeds in a waste pile. And for this, the seeds are dispersed in many different colonies of ants, and they're also protected from predators, and they are in nutrient-rich environments. The third type is food for plants. So plants are allowed to obtain nutrients from the waste of these ants. So plants always are looking for extra nitrogen, and this extra nitrogen comes from the feces, dead bodies, or other debris of ants. And for plants in domatia, this can really be a benefit. So in the domatia, there's 2 types of chambers. There's the smooth chambers, which is where the ants live, and also the rough chambers, which are for the dumping of the waste of ants. And so in these chambers, where this waste is, the plants can absorb its nitrogen or other nutrients it needs into the walls. And this allows large trees or other large plants to get nitrogen and other nutrients faster than just pulling it from the roots. So the next 2 slides are about the type of mutualisms that can be found in this symbiosis. So the first one is facultative mutualism. So this is survival of plant and ant species that are not dependent on each other. So this is the most common mutualism found between plants and ants, and it occurs across multiple species. The plants provide a resource, usually food, that a variety, which is many, not just a specific number of ant species, can visit the plant for. Typically, this is in the form of extrafloral nectar or food bodies for ants. And also the benefit for the plant is simply the ants being on the plant dissuades predators and other herbivores from attacking the plant. There's no other specialized structures on the plants in this, so no domatia, and no coevolution has occurred between the plants and the ants. The next type is obligate mutualism. So this is found mainly in tropical regions, and this has a very specific interaction between plants and ants. Usually, these species have co-evolved together and now cannot live without each other. Certain species of plants only have a 1 or maybe 2 ant species it can host. The plants invest much more time and energy into their ants' benefits, and they usually have domatia for housing the ants along with extrafloral nectar or food bodies to feed them. And this domatia has allowed for continued stable interactions and associations since plants can host an entire ant colony at once. So the main kind of best known example of ant-plant symbiosis is ants and the acacia plants. So the acacia are a genus of plants in the legume family, and they are normally found in tropical dry habitats. Each species has modified thorns at the base of each leaf, but in species associated with ants, these thorns are large and swollen, so much that they look like bull horns. The ants make a small hole at the tip of the thorn, and colonies live inside the hollow-out thorns. So this is where the domatia is inside these thorns, and it has some of the best examples of domatia in all the symbiotic relationships between the two. So the ant genus Pseudomeramax, many species in this genus have evolved with these plants into an obligate mutualism, and these species are only found in these acacia species. The plants provide domatia, extrafloral nectar, food bodies, while the ants protect and defend the plant. The ants also reduce competition around the plant, and it defends the plants from other plants, so that the acacia plant has basically a bare circle around itself where no other plants are growing. And this also may be important as a fire break during forest fires. Not sure about that yet. And so without these ants, acacia plant leaves would be hit hard by herbivores. Studies have shown that acacia plants can reduce the number of nectaries structures when not well defended by their ant symbionts, and they can also invest in higher numbers of nectaries when these ant species are patrolling really well and defending the plant very well. Other studies have shown instances of plant pathogens and necrotic plant tissues increased when ants were removed from the acacia plant. So this happened with an increase of salicylic acid production as well, which is a plant hormone that regulates defense of pathogens. So from that, they inferred that there was more pathogens when there was more salicylic acid. Bacterial populations on the surface of leaves changed as well when ants were removed, and the ants were seen to reduce the number of bacterial pathogens on the leaves, and they think this is done because the bacteria from the legs of ants inhibited the growth of pathogenic bacteria on the plant leaves. However, some of these interactions make you think that maybe it isn't always mutualistic. So, in some species of the acacia plants, they provide their Pseudomeramax species of ants with extrafloral nectar in exchange for protecting the plant from predators, which sounds just like we've been talking about. However, this nectar has no sucrose molecules in it because the sucrose has already been broken down. They also looked at adult ants and found that the ants had no invertase activity in their gut. And invertase is the enzyme that breaks sucrose down into fructose and glucose. And because these ants had no activity of this enzyme, they preferred a more sucrose-free diet in their nectar, which they got from the plants. So in this one study, the researchers looked to see if the acacia plants used their nectar to manipulate the ants into not being able to digest sucrose. They found that ants did still have invertase activity as larvae, but had almost none as adults. From that, they inferred that the activity of the enzyme is lost during development, not during evolution. So they thought that since larvae of the ants only feed on food bodies, while adults mainly feed on the nectar, something in the nectar must be inhibiting the invertase activity. It was determined to be these pathogenous proteins, PR proteins, which are produced by the plant in the event of a pathogen attack, that were in this nectar that inhibited the invertase activity. So, in summary, basically the plant did manipulate the ant into only feeding from its nectar because the ants could not get any other sucrose-free carbohydrates besides the nectar of the plant it was protecting. So to me, that kind of makes you wonder, is this really a mutualistic relationship if the plant is manipulating the ant into only feeding from it? But that's just what I think.